is what we've been doing in Coeur d'Alene. If I wasn't a school teacher, though, I wouldn't want to come to this presentation. I go, what do I do? How do I make this better for people who aren't in the schools? And he said, you know what? I think it's great. They're going to love it. And so I would like to make it pretty practical, though, and useful for you all. So if you could all help me, and the way you help me is by talking a little bit, by asking questions. You, of course, can chat. You can unmute. You can unmute and actually talk in the middle. You can interrupt me and ask a question. All of that would actually make this more of a conversation and discussion rather than me talking about what we're doing in Coeur d'Alene, which either is or is not really, maybe practical for you. Chelsea, you're recording this?
I am. I just wanted to say that. I almost forgot, but I was told to record these sessions. So just FYI, everyone, it's being recorded.
If I'd known that, I would have showered. Come on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we got what we got, right? Okay. So there we are, everybody. Hi. So the idea, I got to share a screen, don't I? Let's share a screen. And for the, and then it changes my view. And I like this view better. There's faces, more than just 5. Hey, thanks for turning your cameras on, everybody. It's good to see you in your living rooms and your offices. That's lovely. All right. Hey, so thumbs up if you can see the slideshow. Okay, good. Right on. We're ready to go. So developing trauma-informed schools. Let's talk about it. Here's the agenda, really. So the very beginning is why do schools matter? How do schools fit into this whole idea of prevention efforts for child abuse and neglect and prevention in the community? Okay, that's pretty quick and easy. I think it's an obvious answer, but so we'll cover that real fast. What role can schools play? Okay, again, I think it's fairly obvious, so that's pretty quick and easy. There's this idea of the journey of Coeur d'Alene schools. So I was hired 1.5 years ago as the mental health specialist, and so we've been on this 3-year journey in Coeur d'Alene to make our schools trauma-informed and whole student focused and partnering with the community better. And the problem is we are just here in partnering with community. We made a lot of steps in a lot of places, but we are just starting to learn how to partner with the community. And that's our goals for our next steps. So we'll talk through that a little bit. And then I guess the question and the conversation, and we'll have some breakout rooms where you all can all talk, chat, and bring your ideas together is, what can you do about it in your community? How do you, in your current role, how do you partner with schools more, better? How can you help move your schools, leverage them, and get them moving in the path that you want them to move? That's part 4. So that's kind of the general outline for the day. But I guess I'm curious, if you do not work in the schools, do you really care about the journey of Coeur d'Alene schools? Really? A little bit? Yeah, I see a couple nods and a couple of, not really, like we don't really care what you're doing up there. Except the journey hopefully is a way to let you know what's possible and maybe to help inform you of, well, if they're doing it up there, maybe we should do that up down here, right? That's kind of the idea. But my question for you is, why are you here today then? I mean, what if you're not a teacher and you can't leverage schools and you're not changing the school system? What can I share, or what do you need in order to know more about how schools work? So would anybody be willing to just pop right in, unmute, share? We got 70 people now? Unbelievable. Roger, I go, look, we can have a great conversation with 20. He didn't tell me 70 people were going to come to this. Come on, Roger. All right. And then apparently I can come up, I can see a chat somewhere eventually. I can find it. There it is. Okay. Anybody willing to unmute and or chat?
I'll be brave and unmute and talk.
Yay.
I think the more people who are talking about trauma-informed anywhere in the state, no matter what our roles, the more people who are talking about it, the more people start understanding it and start questioning and want to find out more, no matter what our are.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Carol. Appreciate that.
Hey, Keith. It's Trish in Grangeville.
Trish!
Hi.
My old friend. Trish and I used to work together. How are you?
Good. I told Stephanie Duclos I would give you a hard time on her behalf since she couldn't participate. So.
Oh, that's nice. Tell her to shut up.
I will.
Okay, good.
I'm very excited to listen about what's going on in Coeur d'Alene schools. A lot of our kiddos, I recently switched over just doing case management. Of course, I have some tough situations, kiddos that are really struggling in the school system. And I oftentimes am getting asked by the school, what do I do? We're getting called to pick up kids because they can't manage behaviors. And a lot of our schools are rural. They lack a lot of those resources. And I'm just really looking forward to getting maybe some ideas and some tips where I can answer that question when they're calling on what to do.
Okay, that's okay. Well, that's $1 million question. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I can kind of speak to that a little bit and fine tune a little bit. Thanks, Trisha. Good to see you, friend.
Yeah, good to see you.
You too.
Keith, are you able to see the chats coming in from people?
Head Start. Yes, we can make bigger difference. Okay. Good. Yeah, good. Okay. So trauma informed at the preschools, I think, so that's good. My conversation about what we did at Coeur d'Alene, I think can parallel. That's the thing, like, okay, how do I do it with my rural school? I think that conversation about what we did up here, you know, good or bad, can lead you down and go, well, if that, maybe we can replicate that a little bit. So I think that's good. And Head Start's the same way. Good. Yeah. So Michelle, let's. Okay, for advocate. Yeah, okay, good. And I think what Michelle just said in the, Chris Freeburn. Hey, Chris, how's it going? Chris chatted. Uh-oh, now the chats are coming in fast and furious. I can't read them fast enough. Okay. Okay. Good. All right. Well, it looks like what you said you wanted is what I had planned. Isn't that lucky? Phew. Okay, good. Well, why don't we jump in with that? Let's go. The first question is, why schools? Why do they matter? Why are they important? Well, because schools are where kids spend the time. Our teachers, the adults, that building or that place, if they don't do any before or after school activities, they're spending about 1/5 of their waking lives from kindergarten through 12th grade in the school building, assuming they attend, assuming they don't have lots of absences, right? But that's a lot of time. They spend more time in the school building than any place else. So of course, that's where kids are at, and we want to meet them where we're at, and we get to know them better in those places because of how much time they spend. So that's a really good thing. Also, because of the time they spend, most of victimization for kids, most child abuse and neglect is discovered by schools. According to the WSU and their research, that first of all, according to them, I don't know how they get this number, but most of kids who are being harmed, we don't even know about. Nobody anywhere in the system knows about them and finds out. But of the 46% we do know about and find out about them, the vast majority of them are discovered by schools and school personnel rather than any other system. Yeah, makes sense. We spend more time, which means we can build bigger, deeper relationships, which means we get to learn things about kids and we get to see patterns and we just know them better. So that makes sense. So schools are an important part of that. Of course, the ACEs. I don't even remember why I put this slide in there, right? Because kids are showing up with ACEs. Yeah, everyone on here, we don't need to talk about ACEs, do we? Everyone knows about ACEs, the 10 categories. They lead to all these different things. But the truth is, if you surveyed schools around the state, if you did a survey of school teachers around the state, how many of them would know what ACEs are and could explain what ACEs are and why they're important? Any guesses? You can chat, you can speak. I mean, I don't know the answer. I think what I'm finding is I've traveled all over Idaho presenting to schools and outside of Idaho. And I go, hey, let's talk for foundation trauma-informed practices. What are ACEs? How many people know? And there's always people who know, and there's always a lot of people who don't. And depending on the location, it could be up to like half of the staff still have never heard about ACEs. So that's kind of a problem, right? I mean, foundationally, the ACEs research is the first, really the place to start. It's the first thing that adults need to know about child abuse and neglect, why it's important. And then as we move forward, like how does it affect kids? That's what teachers need to know to be trauma informed. And so I guess my question for you, we'll start right there. People go, how do I advocate for this? How do I make my school system more trauma informed? What do I do? That might be the first question. Go, how many of my teachers know what ACEs are? And if they don't, then that would be a place to start, right? Okay. So, and then here's another chance I'd like to hear from you. So people who are courageous and willing to unmute or chat, what role do schools play in preventing child abuse and neglect? Right, because this is a prevention conference. Of course we respond, we're mandated reporters, so we respond to abuse and neglect. What do we do that helps prevent abuse and neglect? What are some ideas? People must be chatting, right? Relationships. Roger Sherman, you on? You're chatting anyway.
He's on. Hey, Keith, we had a question. Do you care if we share these slides with participants?
No, I don't care.
Or
That'd be good.
you don't care?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll link it in the chat for you guys then.
Okay, now I finally got to the chat. How do I make this where I can see more than one chat at a time? Come on, Keith, you can do this. All right. Yeah, so schools listen to children, teach parenting classes, they model healthy relationship, they create a safe place, they build rapport, good. Providing meals, yes. Building connections to families, yes. Good. Schools do all sorts of things. So we got all these things about just basic childcare, right? Meals, relationships, after school activities, teach skills, resiliency skills. They do provide mental health services. They create a sense of community. And I know the keynote speaker yesterday talked about these CDC 6 strategies for prevention. Schools don't do a whole lot of number one, not a lot, other than maybe provide free childcare and after school programming and meals. So a little bit in there, right? A little bit of this, we provide public health education and activities. Yeah, that's good. Yes, of course, childcare and family engagement that way. Of course, we teach a lot of skills. There are some parenting classes, but the truth is teachers and schools aren't really, as far as I know, teaching a lot of parenting classes. It is far more partnering with other community members and agencies to do that on our grounds. Of course, it's about connections. And what's this last one? Maybe a little bit less of that last one. So the schools are doing a lot, and yet that's not why schools were created. Schools were not created to do these things originally, right? Schools were created to educate, and that's what we're there for. And it is their primary role. And still, if you ask community members, they go, well, we want our kids to learn to read, write, history and math, right? So it's academically focused, which is a challenge to do all these other things because teachers go, I got stuff to do. So there's a lot of pressures in schools. Teachers are busy and stressed and asked to do a lot, as you can see. And the school system itself is asked to do a lot. We're going to launch a poll here real quick. I'm curious to know, think of your local school district, one closest to you, the one you live in, the one your kids go to. How well is your school doing right now, your school, that elementary school, or you can think of your school district as a whole, either way. How well are they doing teaching academic skills? How are they doing teaching behavioral skills, social skills, and mental health skills? And you got a poll, 0 is not at all, 5 is they're doing it really, really well. So why don't we take a couple minutes, rank your school district in those 4 categories, and then we'll see what it looks like.
I'm not totally sure how you guys are seeing this, but you should be able to vote, kind of like rank for each of those categories. So you might have to scroll down and answer each poll. I can see responses are coming in, like 11 of you have responded. So try to answer those. And when we have a good amount, we'll close it out and show the results.
Give it maybe 30 more seconds.
About 70% of people have responded. Get them in, get them in. All right, a couple more seconds. I will end the poll now.
Is someone in my
Okay.
slideshow right now? Drawing?
Oh, somebody's annotating. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's never happened before. I've never shared my
Usually people
slides in the
don't know how
middle.
to do it, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. If this was elementary school, someone would be drawing a penis in there and then we'd have to figure out who it was, you know. Maybe that's more middle school. I don't know.
Can you all see the results of the poll? Keith, are you able to see them?
Where would I see them?
Yeah, okay. So you can't because you're the co-host, but everyone else can.
Okay, well, it looks like, see, I don't see the categories on mine. Mine are interesting. I don't get to see what everyone else sees.
No, you don't. Yeah, because I made you a co-host. So, I'm gonna withdraw your co-host. I don't know if you can see it now.
Yeah, so question one, it looks like we got the majority are 33% on academic. So a score of 3 wins, but the majority of people, 3, 4, 5, the vast majority of people. Second one, behavioral. Now the winner is a 2. So school's not doing really well teaching behavior, according to the group. And then social, that's a bell curve. If I've ever seen one, huh? Yeah, pretty bell curvy within the 3 in the middle. And then mental health, another pretty good bell curve, isn't it? Huh? We're all over the map. Okay. Some people think, yeah, my school's doing pretty great in these categories, but a very small percent. And the vast majority kind of in the middle think schools could do better. Okay.
Hey, Keith.
Yeah.
My answers were informed by what's happening with COVID during this time of COVID. I would have answered a little bit differently, a little bit higher up for most of those categories, pre-COVID or post-COVID, but it's been a struggle. So.
Well, that's fair. Like, how are schools doing teaching behavioral skills remotely? I don't even know how that's possible, right? Or what they would do. And how are they managing mental health remotely when kids are not in school? So yeah, I think COVID absolutely would inform some of these, and our scores might change maybe next year or a year ago, perhaps. Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate that. Okay, well, so some schools doing okay, even during COVID, according to you, but work to be done in all those areas. And now schools are recognizing that they are more than just engines to improve academic achievement in students. That schools recognize that behavior, social, and mental health are important pieces of that. Most schools, and it's moving that direction. So let's talk about the Coeur d'Alene School District. How did we get to where we are and where are we going? Like probably 4 years ago, they had not heard of ACEs. I don't think any of them. And they didn't know anything about trauma-informed practices. We were learning it in child welfare. And I approached my son's former principal. I actually approached James Curb in the district because I knew him. And then he sent me to the assistant superintendent and said, hey, Keith's got this idea to teach us trauma. I go, look, in child welfare, we are learning about trauma-informed practices, and it's changing the way we see kids, it's changing the way we see families, it's changing how we're doing work. I think the schools would benefit. She goes, yeah, would you come on in? And she had me present to the leadership team a number of times, and they all go, oh my gosh, you're right. I think our teachers need this. And schools have chances for professional development. Up in Coeur d'Alene, for years, up until this year, we had late start Mondays. And that was a chance for schools to get together on Monday mornings, no kids, meet for an hour and a half and do professional development or other kind of team organizing, building, planning stuff. Most schools and most school districts have either a late start or an early release day in order to do that same thing. And so what they did was hired me to come in, and now they actually started to pay. They paid me some money to come in and present to their schools on Monday morning. And everybody in the school district got this idea of trauma-informed schools. And that's where we started. And that was like 3 years ago. Well, that's not true. Not everybody, every elementary school. Because that's with 17 schools, there's only so many Mondays. And one presentation doesn't do it. So every elementary school got 4 days throughout the year. They booked me every Monday throughout the whole year to present. And so where did we start? We started with ACEs. And then we started with Flip Your Lid model from Dan Siegel, right, of the brain. So talk about regulation and what state you're in, the Flip Your Lid model, and related it to zones of regulation. And so we said you need, as a school district, common language and throughout the school district. So different staff, like your second grade teacher saying, girl, you're in your downstairs brain. And then they go to lunch and whoever's supervising the lunchroom says, oh, you look like you flipped your lid. And then you go to PE and they go, girl, you've lost your ever-loving mind. And they're all saying the same thing, but they're using different language. So he said, you got to get good at your language. You got to be consistent at your language. I suggested they do Flip Your Lid and zones, and pretty much it's been adopted in Coeur d'Alene throughout. So when I go to Nampa or other school districts, Pocatello and a bunch of other ones, I say, this is where we start. So we say, learn about regulation, learn about, and so that teachers understand it. They know that when kids misbehave, it's not because they're little turds and because they want to, it's because maybe they don't know what else to do and they're dysregulated and they need some help and they're not good at regulating. And this is step one for self-awareness. How do I feel? And if I'm in the yellow, what do I do about it? Right? Okay, so we did that. And then we would teach them the stress response system and how it gets wired and how kids with trauma have a hypervigilant stress response system that is overactive. So it takes just a tiny bit of stress and a tiny bit of fear, and then they flip and they enter fight or flight, which leads to, this is Bruce Perry's work, high resting heart rates, and they look like they're behavioral explosive, and they look all of these things. And I always go, do you have kids that look like this? And they're all going, uh-huh, yes, we do. And then I go, what do they get labeled as? Well, we do an activity where they label them as all those things like spoiled, rotten, mean, turds, right? And then someone gets someone actually gets real and they go, little shit. And I go, okay, now we're talking how you really think about kids when they disrupt your class over and over and over. So we try and get really real about how we feel about and think about kids who do these things. And then they get these labels. They often get labels ADHD, opposition defiant, cognitive disorder, and so on, right? Then we have the conversation about medication and how medication will really significantly help ADHD because that's a chemistry problem in the brain. Yep. But trauma is not a chemistry problem. It is a little bit. There is chemistry issues, and you give a kid from trauma a stimulant, it will change their behavior kind of a little bit. But if they're not true to ADHD, it's not going to help because trauma is a wiring problem. And how do you change wiring? Bruce Perry would say patterned, repetitive, consistent responses and experiences change wiring, which it means it's slow. And that is really a very great realization for teachers to understand that, oh, I have to train their brain and train experiences. But then we teach about dissociation, and most teachers don't know about it. They've never really heard about it other than, I don't know. They've just never really heard about what dissociation is. They kind of understand. And that's a different chemical in the brain. That dissociation release opioids rather than adrenaline. And then that has the opposite effect. Instead of hypervigilant and throwing tables and yelling and screaming and getting in fights, they completely shut down. They look spacey. They have a hard time tracking and learning. It's kind of like if you're on pain meds. And the teachers can get that. They go, oh. And some kids, particularly kids from hard places who were really neglected and or sexually abused, where adrenaline does not help them. Actually, opioids help them a great deal because adrenaline increases your heart rate and uses your energy. And if you got no food in the house, adrenaline is not going to help you. If your parents aren't around, adrenaline is not going to help you. Dissociation, slowing your whole body down and spacing out and not feeling the pain in the moment is going to help you. So some kids come to school, they get a little stressed and they go into, and they release opioids in their brain and they have a dissociative response. And teachers miss these kids because they're not flipping tables and they're not disrupting classes. And we miss them too. We missed them in child welfare over and over and over. We gave all the services to the little boy who we sheltered because he was violent and going to blow out of foster care. And the little sweet little girl who was compliant and they were going to adopt her, we didn't give her the same services until she turned 13 and started doing drugs and running away and cutting on herself. Then we go, what happened to our little girl? We missed the fact that she was dissociating since age 5. So that's what we're teaching to teachers. That's good for them to know. They go, oh, is that maybe what's happening to our students? Not that they're just lazy. She's lazy. Maybe not. So you can see a lot of this is about changing, educating teachers and then changing their perspective about why kids do what they do. And when they see this slide, many of you have seen this slide before, is the idea about the slide, the child on the right was a Romanian orphan. If anyone's ever presented this slide before, I read the study that this came from. I think it's listed on there. There's a study where this slide, oh wait.
Okay.
I've read this study. I don't know what age these brains are, but I'm told that they're the same age. And I've always wondered what they were. I've really tried to find the answer. So if anybody knows, let me know. Same age child though, one with extreme neglect. And then you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, her brain is wired completely differently than her peer. And when you see this, when teachers see this, they go, oh, this child executively is able to do all sorts of things and is going to react, right? It's going to maybe have some hard times and to be dysregulated sometimes, but this child is going to be dysregulated a fair amount and not have the executive functioning to work out the issues. And they go, ah. So this image itself is pretty powerful and can help a lot of people about what's happening with the child. But the whole point is, in the end, they stop blaming kids for struggling. Because maybe it's a can't problem. They're unable to regulate. They're unable to manage their emotions. They're unable to communicate and problem solve well, rather than they just plain won't. Because when they won't, that's a discipline problem. That's a motivation problem, which could include discipline, positive or negative reinforcement, right? But a can't problem is different. That means we have to teach skills. And that is a very different response. And so teachers go, oh, I guess we have to teach our kids skills too? Yeah, we actually have to teach them regulation and problem solving and, skills like that, which is why we go to the flip your lid model. That's the beginning of teaching regulation. So I don't know, we teach them the difference for survival skills. They go, what about that kid who's not flipped and still is absolutely manipulative, looking you dead in the eye and lying to you and playing this game and power struggling with you, even though they're absolutely not dysregulated and flipped. We go, oh yeah, well, those are survival skills. Maybe they're not dysregulated issue. Maybe it's more of a survival skill that they've learned how to, and that's a good reframe for teachers. And that's really what foundation is, a lot of reframe for teachers. So they see kids differently. They approach them with more empathy and understanding rather than just, rather than in a punitive, frustrated way. Gretchen, were you going to say something?
No, I was just thinking how great it is for the kids that are getting the benefit of all this education to their teachers, and how badly it's needed.
Yeah, because I remember when I learned it like 10 years ago, it absolutely changed my life.
Yeah.
It changed how I saw kids, it changed how I saw families, and it changed how I did my work with them. And I go, oh my gosh, teachers need this so badly. So that's, and then the teachers go, okay, I get it. That's what's happening. So what do we do about it? Step one, you got to create a culture of safety in the school.
Culture of safety, yeah.
We call that culture of safety. This is borrowed from a lot of models, but this is from Pete Hall. Pete, who lives in Post Falls, Idaho, happens to be my brother-in-law. He wrote Fostering Resilient Learners with Kristen Sowers out of Spokane. And it's a great book about creating trauma-informed schools, but create a culture of safety. Because when kids feel safe, their lids come back on, and then they can learn and do better. So how do we do that? It's about relationships. Okay, yes, good. Of course, if you don't have a relationship, you're going to have a hard time. And we knew that. Anybody who's been in mental health knows that the most important aspect of any kind of therapy is the alliance between the therapist and the child. So relationships matter. Teachers know this, but now they know why. And then, okay, so we talk about relationships and how they do that and how, and then when we get in deeper, they go, yeah, I know relationships. We dig into why is it so hard to build a relationship with that student? So we teach teachers about attachment, their own attachment, and students. They go, oh, that helps. We teach them about their own self-management. We go, why are you flipping your lid? What are your triggers? What are your buttons? Why are those your buttons? Why are you so insecure? Like I was a teacher for a couple of years, and my button was when kids would say, this is boring. And I go, you're boring. Like, I don't know. It was stupid. I didn't know what to do. I got flipped because when they said this is boring, I heard you're a bad teacher. You're failing. And so I'd flip my lid. So we do a lot of that with teachers, right? A lot of their own awareness and growth, that kind of thing, right? Of course, we teach teachers about the body. They know about the exterior senses, but we teach them about, we teach them about proprioception and vestibulation, because really kids from hard places have sensory processing issues. And it doesn't mean that they're on the spectrum. It means they have sensory processing issues. And so how do we meet? So we started, by the way, here was our journey. We started with trauma-informed practices. And then they passed a levy in Coeur d'Alene, and they said, we need this full time, not just a Monday 4 times a year, because we got 17 schools. How do we do this? They actually hired 2 of us. They passed a levy and hired 2 people. They hired me as the mental health specialist and Andy West, my friend from child welfare, as the mental health coordinator. And so we started talking, and we go, and we both were presenting this to all the schools. Now we moved to the middle schools, and now this year the high schools. But we said we didn't want it to be trauma informed. We didn't like that language because we go, oh, it's just another label for those bad kids who aren't doing well. They're the trauma kids. I got 4 trauma kids in my class. Do you know what teachers call kids? They call them behaviors. I have 4 behaviors in my class. You go, are you freaking kidding me? You have behaviors in your class? Yeah, really? So we've been trying to get away from those kind of labels. And so we didn't want to do, we didn't want a new label like I got 4 trauma kids in my class. It's just a different label for kids not doing well. So we changed it to whole student schools, which is for everybody. All students are whole students, and we need to teach and grow and nurture the whole student, no matter where they come from. And kids from hard places need more of all of it, but every kid needs all of this. So we talk about physical needs. And if you go into Coeur d'Alene schools now, particularly elementary schools, they are snacking up their kids, right? They're giving water and food breaks every 2 hours. They realize if we got low blood sugar, kids aren't going to learn. So that was one of the main lessons. And you'll see snacks in our schools. Teacher, back in the day, they go, nope, no food in the classroom, no water in the classroom. You can only get a drink when I tell you to drink, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's really changed. That's changed a great deal. Then they think about sensory needs. You can walk into schools and now you start seeing the lights off and more lamps and like Christmas lights around, and alternative seating. Desks aren't in rows. They got beanbag chairs and wobble chairs, and kids are allowed to sit on the floor, and kids are allowed to stand up at a desk or at a table. So they're changing the environment that the kids are in, considering that the kids might have some sensory needs in their classrooms, and they're trying to meet all the varied sensory needs in the school. Schools typically have been pretty good with schedules and routines. That's something they've always really kind of thrived at. But we know that one of the things they go, well, what's your schedule and routine when you have a sub? That's one of the main questions, because for certain kids, that is the main trigger, and that's the change that throws them off. So they consider that kind of stuff, right? So we teach them about all the environmental stuff. Okay. We're not going to stretch and talk, right? And yeah, and then we have them anyway. Okay. And then Andy and I, this is something I think, I shared these slides. I didn't ask Andy. Usually I prefer to ask her before I share our stuff because together we decided, what model are we going to use? What are we going to teach for kids? We chose, we borrowed heavily from TBRI, if you know what that is, trust-based relational intervention out of Texas Christian University. And it is an attachment-based therapy that child welfare, certainly in North Idaho, was in too heavy. And because they're working with kids with disorganized attachment, and it is an attachment protocol and therapy. And we think that that is really powerful for the schools. So we borrowed heavily from TBRI, but we're going to be a TBRI school. TBRI is not indicated for schools. They have not created a school curriculum and a school model. So we borrowed from them. We borrowed from Bruce Perry. We borrowed from Ross Green's Lost at School and other places. And we came up with a model of the heart, body, and mind. So we try to make it simple. We got 3 categories: heart, body, and mind. The heart is about relationships, connections, engaging of students. And that's all the TBRI stuff like proximity. And when we used to be able to get close, when we used to be able to touch them, physical contact, eye contact, those kind of things. Then the body, all the sensory needs and all the body needs. And then the mind. Of course, teachers are always working at the mind. They're always training, they're always teaching skills. But we said, what behavioral skills, what regulation skills are you actively teaching, proactively teaching, and then reteaching when kids are calm? Because we often teach skills after a kid flipped and go, what should you do next time? They go, oh, well, why don't you breathe here, breathe. I can see you're upset. This kid needs to be taught how to breathe, how to take a walk, how to calm down when he's not upset or when he's only mildly upset. And he needs to practice it over and over and over and over. And then when the kid lies and gets him out in Foursquare and everyone tells him it hit the line when he knows it did not hit the line, maybe he can keep his crap together for a few minutes because he's had some practice with those skills. But they got to practice in the moment, practice proactively when they're fine, not in the moment. That's new for teachers. Teachers never really have been taught how to teach behavioral skills proactively. So we nurture the heart, body, and mind. How do we do it? We do 80% of it in preparation. How do we organize our schools? How do we build a community? How do we train our teachers, or how do we prepare and teach the skills so kids can be successful? And this is tier 1, all the kids. And then we teach the skills. How do we respond to them? So what are our responses and de-escalation skills so that teachers help support a child and meet the need underneath the behavior rather than just stomp out the behavior? Because behavior is more than just behavior, right? It's communication. So how do they respond? And hopefully the key part is so we don't have adults escalating kids in schools, which we have from time to time. And they're not doing it on purpose, but they are accidentally flipping kids' lids and getting into power struggles. And then kids flip out. And then the teachers go, yeah, he's dangerous. He can't be here anymore. It's bad. It's bad for kids. It's bad for adults. And then we haven't really got here a lot yet, but the restoration, once a kid does flip, how do we get them back using, really the model we'll probably use is restorative justice to go, how do we get these kids back in the community? I'll tell you though, I asked one school at our middle school, Lakes Middle School, this is my 2nd year there. So they've been kind of a pilot school for 1.5 years. And they go, what's different in the school? I go, I don't know what's different because I wasn't here before. I go, what do you say is different? And they've been there for like 3 or 4 years. They go, well, classrooms are different. Lighting is different. The way they allow kids to go to the bathroom and get snacks is different. The way teachers are willing to say, that kid doesn't need to be expelled or suspended for 3 days. Can you just put him out of my class for today, have him come talk to me after class, and then he's welcome back in class. Like they say, that is a huge difference in the teacher's reference for kids and their misbehavior and their willingness to bring them back into relationship and into the class. So I said that I thought that was really good news. Okay. Oh, here's my line. So we started with trauma informed, then we went to whole student schools, and now we're into social and emotional learning. It's kind of the label that we have, right? So I tell you this because your school district might call it any one of these 3 things. Generally, nationwide, social emotional learning is kind of the thing where everyone's going. So that might be kind of the label or the umbrella in which it all fits. So a couple more things, then we'll throw it out to you. We'll just have a discussion. So the Coeur d'Alene School District has this portrait of a graduate. This was not my doing. This was the superintendent and the community and said, what kind of kids do we want in our graduating from Coeur d'Alene schools? There's a lot of school districts that have portrait of graduates. And if they don't, it's a question to ask. Do they? Does your school district have a portrait of a graduate? If not, why not? Would they consider it? This took a year and a half of dozens and dozens of meetings with community members, business leaders, the board of directors, teachers, students, parents, and said, what kind of kids do we want coming out of our schools? And here's what they landed on. And notice one of 6 categories is content knowledge. So the beauty of this is that the community recognizes that, yes, this is really important, but it's not the only thing we want schools doing. And it really supports schools, teachers, principals, anybody to say, I'm teaching my students about not just character, but really about regulation or relationship skills, or how to problem solve, or how to do community collaboration. And they go, oh, and if they say, I don't want my kids being taught, like we've heard, like they should not be doing meditation and yoga in schools. There's a separation of church and state, because some people read yoga as a religious practice.
Mhm.
If you watch the way we do yoga in our schools, you go, there is no religion in it, right? It is body movement and regulation. It's physiological, and it is a secular practice. But some people read that and they go, so we don't want yoga in the schools. They go, well, we need to teach our kids how to regulate. Yogas and mindfulness are 2 of those practices. They go, hey, we also have diversity, understanding, taking perspectives, and, respecting people with diverse backgrounds. And they say, I don't want, critical race theory in our school is the thing. We don't want any critical race theory in the school. They go, well, that's not critical race theory. What we're talking about is understanding perspectives and empathy. And that is part of our portrait of a graduate. So doing this project helps, give us leverage and protect us from people who says schools shouldn't be doing that. That's the right of the parents. They go, well, I don't know. Our community says schools should be doing this. Or not just schools, our whole community needs to be growing this, because this is not just a school goal, is to get everybody here. So anyway, portrait of graduate. And then we wrote a social emotional learning framework. Andy and I did, that outlined how we were going to do our work. It passed the board. Part of it, we're saying we're going to actually teach students social emotional learning skills. We wrote that explicitly. We're going to actually take school time to teach social emotional learning skills, and the board passed it. Great. But that's not all we're going to do. We understand that if we don't take care of our staff, none of it's going to work. And that staff well-being is a high priority. And so we need to support our staff in any way we can. If we don't engage families and they're not on board, none of this is going to work. So we need to engage families. And schools, we got enough to do. Like, how are we going to do all this? We have to partner with community members who have expertise, who have resources, who can come in and support us to do all those things. And I'll say we're a year and a half into this. When we wrote this a year and a half ago, we've done a fair amount of number 1. We're doing pretty good. We're doing a fair amount of number 2. We're working on it. And we're just starting, particularly in a COVID time, we're just starting 3 and 4. It's been hard to do. We haven't been allowed, kids weren't in school, and then we weren't allowed other volunteers in schools. So 3 and 4 is where we're moving next. Next steps, this is a lot of words. What do we need? We're writing SEL standards. You don't need to know all this, right? We're going to write an SEL curriculum so we can teach it. Our goal is to expand mental health services in schools. So this is where you all can come in, and now we get to the more practical. How do you help, or how is this useful for you in your schools? So expanding mental health services means we are hoping to bring therapists into our school. Not just hoping, we've done it. We've partnered with 2 agencies in town who say, for a half day or a day, we have a therapist who has some time, and she can come into your middle school on Monday mornings. And so right now she could see 4 students. And so the school is responsible for finding a space and getting paperwork signed, tracking down the parents and getting all the releases signed. The therapist will come in and we'll be able to do therapy for kids who really need it, who for some reason can't get it outside of school because of scheduling or transportation or something else. And the model is that the therapist, they're paying for it by billing Medicaid. And the school has some funding to help if a kid isn't eligible for Medicaid, the school can help pay the therapist for some gaps and to show up to other meetings like IEP meetings or other meetings to inform the school district about how that student is doing. So that's one of our partnerships. And we hope to expand that a great deal. I just heard of a partnership in Nampa. Is anybody here from Nampa School District?
No.
So Endeavor Elementary apparently brings therapists into the school to give therapy to teachers. And they started it and they had like 5 teachers doing therapy in a day. And now they say they're up to like 20 teachers in a week getting therapy in school hours. You talk about partnership to support teachers. Because when teachers are well, when they are regulated, they do fantastic work. When they're flipped and stressed and overwhelmed, then they do less good work. So that's a beautiful partnership. Our goal is to partner with other school districts to share our stuff and to partner with more community members. So this is our 3, 5, 7-year goal. So what's happening right here on this page. Okay. Gosh, that's a lot of talking. I got a few more, like what did we learn? And then I just want to process with you and we'll see where we're at. Okay. The strengths. How have we done? These are the things we've done well. We had a superintendent that had a vision and he said, I want, with this levy, I want to expand mental health services. And he wrote it and got it to hire 2 people. None of it happens without that vision, right? And then he also had the vision to do the portrait of a graduate, which was a visioning thing and says, this is where we're heading as a district. And then we started when social emotional learning said, instead of just going in from school to school and giving training and training and training, we said, what's our vision? Where are we going? Otherwise, we just keep saying stuff, but then we changed our language and 2 years later, now we talk about whole school. And then 2 years later, we talk about social emotional learning. And the constant change for teachers is exhausting and overwhelming. And they just stop listening because they go, you just keep coming in with new stuff all the time. Can we stick with one thing? So we had to slow down and create a vision and be really, really specific about what words we were going to use, because we go, we don't want to change these words in the next 5 years. We want to be consistent. We're a medium district, 11,000 students, but we have some resources. And if you are a really small rural district, you have far fewer resources. So we can leverage a lot of resources to do what we've been doing, which is helpful. So the rural school district will be an interesting conversation coming up. And then because of all that, it's multi-year. We said, we have a 10-year plan. And we go, we don't need to do all of this right now. It's all necessary, but we can't do it all right now. We need to keep consistent year after year after year. We're in the middle of year 2 and year 3 is getting planned. And so far our consistency, I think, has been good, right? And teachers go, oh, they're here to stay. This stuff matters. It's not going away. I guess maybe I should get on board. Stephanie, are you planning to share your standards and curriculum throughout the rest of the state? Yeah, good, thanks. Well, we're writing our standards. Yeah, we would share standards. They would become public once we get our standards approved by the board and written. And the curriculum, I don't know. I don't know if that's public. I don't know why not. Curriculum is approved by the board. It's probably a public thing. And I think it probably should be shared. I would hope so. We're really hoping to partner and get some sister schools and sister school districts so they don't have to recreate the wheel, because we're going to put a lot of effort into writing this curriculum. It's going to be hundreds of our hours in the next year to write. And that's just going to be a middle school curriculum, social emotional learning curriculum. Like, we got a lot of work to do. The barriers, consistency. People leave, our superintendent is leaving. Teachers leave. We get a school moving and going, and then they hire 20% new teachers the next year. And then 3 years later, they have 38% new teachers in the school. So now what do we do? Some of them are well-trained and some of them never heard of it. Opposition. So there is a movement in the community, a very conservative movement that says social emotional learning doesn't belong in schools. You know, I already told you some of those other things. And so anything that starts to sound like critical race theory or social justice movements or anything like that can create a very loud, even though it's small, very loud backlash. And parental rights is huge. So doing therapy in the schools, we've got to be very careful about parental rights, because that's a big movement and people will get loud. And then the other one was system change or system change fatigue. It's always changing. And guess what? We wrote a social emotional learning framework that we want our teachers to know, understand, and implement. And 5 other groups wrote frameworks at the same time. Assessment framework, a instructional framework, a What else was it? An equity framework. Oh my gosh. And we're all trying to do all of it at the same time. So that is a system challenge. Then when we talk about system change, the number of things we ask teachers to think about and do differently can absolutely overwhelm them. And your district is no different. So it's something you got to consider. Okay. Lessons learned. You need a top-down approach. So you need to go to the top. And if it's not bought in by the superintendent, or this won't work in a school if the principal doesn't want it. Principal has to ask for it. And it's not going to work in a school district unless the leadership, the assistant superintendent or superintendent wants it. So top-down approach is necessary in terms of leadership, but you can't make it top-down. Then it has to be ground up from there. I used to think one great training changed the world, because people go, oh, that changed my life. It changed my perspective, and that's lovely. And then they can't implement it, and it does not change a system. And so you can go in and present, and that is a good thing. But without consistency, it's not going to stick or go anywhere. I've already talked about adult care. And then that alignment. The words we use and what we're teaching teachers, if that's different from what the equity group is teaching and the words they're using, and what special ed is teaching about how to respond to kids, because special eds tend to be very, very behavioralistic. If we're using different models and different language, none of it's going to work. It's too much, too many words, too many models, too many ideas, and it doesn't stick. So we have to constantly talk at a leadership level about what we're teaching and spreading and what our message is, and that has to be consistent, or it's gonna fail. Okay, there we are. So questions to ask your own school district. What's your vision for social emotional learning? Do you have it? Where's it going? Is it part of the curriculum? What are you doing with it? How are you meeting social emotional learning of the students? And then the question is, how can we help as a community agency? What keeps you from reaching out to parents? What keeps you from reaching out to us? Is it just time and overwhelmed? Is it resources? Is it space? Is it just they don't know any better? Because the goal, like, of this conference is not just knowing what the school's doing, it's knowing, it's partnering with the schools, because that's the big answer, right? How do you all help schools do what they're doing better? If that's where the kids are, maybe you should get there too, huh? As much as possible. Okay, so discussion time. I was thinking, this one's off my screen. Is it off your screen too?
No, it's on mine.
Oh, that's weird. The left-hand time is cut off on mine. Strange.
Oh, yeah, the left side.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? Why would it be doing that? Why would it do that? I don't know. What if we just did that instead?
Okay.
So in the chat, we're going to put you into chat rooms for a few minutes. So that's a lot of words, a lot of talking. Thanks for hanging in with me. Everything we talked about, a couple of things. How about question one? I didn't even put it here. Question one is, anything that I talked about was an aha for you, or a cool idea, or something that you're taking away, right? Share that with your group going, man, that was cool. I didn't even think about that, or stuff like that, right? So that's question one. Question two is, how do you think your district is doing with any of this stuff? Do you even know? And if you don't know, how would you find out? And we can, afterwards, when you come back, you can ask some of those questions. 2 years ago, I would have had no idea how to find out. I didn't know how a school system worked, right? I didn't know who the key decision makers were. I didn't know how they made decisions. I didn't even know what a school board was really for. I knew there was a school board. I didn't know what they did. And now I kind of know what a school board is and how incredibly important your school board members are. I had no idea. So that's question two. And question three is your chance to brainstorm, going, what was already happening in your school district that you love? You go, we're doing this in our school district. People go, what? How'd you pull that off? So now we're kind of brainstorming. When we come back, pick somebody from your group who's willing to maybe share a little bit, right? And say, and not every group will get a go, but if people have really innovative stuff they'd like the whole group to know, now we're into group discussion time. And that'd be kind of nice to share our overall, knowledge and understanding, because you all have a lot of experience out there. Questions before we put you into the groups?
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is, I don't know if you're going to think it's just off topic. So my daughter works for an online school and it's growing. Probably some of the impetus came from COVID. This would be hard, obviously, to integrate all of the stuff. Would there be some modification that could be made for teachers of online?
I've presented to our online school because we created one last year in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, we made an online school. And then I presented to them a few times, mostly this stuff. So they understood kids and how they do it, how they create a culture of safety online, how they meet their physical needs and other things online is something we were just starting to talk about because I don't know. I've never done it and neither has anybody else that I know of, right? It's a really hard, complicated question. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. In the chat are the 3 questions. So you can either take a picture of that or I don't know, that comes up. So Miss Chelsea's good.
Chat. Yeah, in the breakout rooms, you can view the chat and you can also like privately message the big room. If you need help, just ask for help. I am gonna send you an invite now. So you can just accept your invite to go into your breakout room and we'll bring you back.
Okay.
Hey, it's going to be about what this is. There's 4 people in group. That's a number of questions. It's going to be almost 10 minutes long. You're going to have some time and we'll give you some prompts, how much time you got. Okay. So take your time, answer it deeply. And if you're bored, come on back to the mid room and we'll talk.
All right. I just opened up the room. So y'all should see those invites.
So we're in our little room. All of us are Head Start. And we haven't done anything like that, but we were going, maybe we could do something like that. So it might be kind of fun.
Yay. Thanks. Chris, you were going to jump in. Thank you.
Oh, yes, thanks. Our group just really loved that portrait of a graduate and just really how unifying that is to kind of gain support for people, kind of just what it is that you want. We liked the common language and how simple you described that, just how important that is for kids and really everybody doing this to share that language as it can be all over the place. And then I guess just another thought was, even if a school is not on board, the power of one teacher to commit to doing this in his or her own classroom setting, and that still is a viable thing to do. But yeah, so thanks.
Appreciate that, Chris. Anybody else want to pop in with an aha?
I like the idea of providing support to the teachers or the parents or the other adults, whoever is working with the children, because, if you have a kid with a challenging behavior and you're under a lot of stress, it can be more difficult to manage on both ends. So I think I like the idea of the more holistic, like working with the students as well as working with the teachers on stress and mental health.
Cool, thanks. Okay.
I was going to say one other thing, and that's I work with the Parents as Teachers program and home visitation. And but I used to be a teacher as well in elementary school. And I also love the fact of getting teachers some help and some ability to talk about those things that are stressful in their days. I heard a quote from Fred Rogers that if it's mentionable, it's manageable. And I think that a lot of times teachers don't have a chance to mention some of those things. And so often they go back into the classroom each day not knowing how to manage those things. So giving an opportunity to reflect upon those things that may be hard throughout the day and talking with somebody about it to be able to manage those things and really recognize their own triggers.
Love it. Thanks. How about what I'm really interested in is, question 2, where are you all at? That's fine. Let's jump in with that because I'm interested. I'm super interested in question 3. And the one great idea I had, or that popped up in our group was, what if we did a portrait of graduate for preschool? or early Head Start. And I go, what a cool idea. Talk to your community members and your staff and your parents. What do you want these kids leaving and heading to kindergarten as and like, and what do you want them to know and all? I thought, what a cool idea. So anyway, I wanted to share that. So how about, what other ideas? What's the takeaway, or what partnerships do you have in the community that I go, I never thought of that, and then I can steal from you and we can use that in Coeur d'Alene?
Keith, the small group that I was in, the young lady from Pocatello mentioned about a partnership in her community where the judge would hold a weekly session, I believe it is, for all those people who wanted to attend that were interested in helping kids. So I'm assuming when they all gathered in the judge's chambers, they talked about the issues of the day and how those that attended, the community members, could potentially solve problems. But I thought that was a unique way to start a partnership anyway, from that perspective.
Love it. Wow, cool.
I work for a community school, so we have literally all the partnerships in the world. We have a food pantry and a clothes pantry, and I work personally for Project Launch, which is its own partnership with the community school. And we work with speech and OT therapists that come on site, and we also have a counseling or a counselor that comes on site 3 times a week for the kiddos, and we have dental that comes on site, or will be coming on site next month, and they'll be coming once a week, and we have eye doctors, optometrists that will be coming as well. So we have a bunch of different people that come to our schools, and we're working on getting more, but that's part of the whole community school system.
What school is that, Christina?
Marcy?
What's that?
Marcy?
Oh, in Marsing.
The Marcy School District, yeah.
That,
Our superintendent's pretty awesome and progressive.
yeah. So the whole model, if you really want to know, go, how do we partner with schools? Look up community schools, how to create a community school. That's the idea, right? Is that the school is the hub and has the building that we've paid tens of millions of dollars for. We might as well use it after 3 p.m. other than just for basketball games. So how do we do that? How do we keep the doors open through the night? How do we partner with that so it's organized, supervised, safe, clean, the whole bit? And so community can use that building for far more than just educating children, which is beautiful. Apparently I was told this is supposed to end at 11:05, not 11:15. Is that a true statement?
I'm so sorry, Keith, and this is my mistake. But is that so? We're supposed to send y'all to do like a full group closing on the 05, but I'm like texting with other people in other sessions. Everyone is going over, so we can go a couple more minutes.
Okay. Oh well, shoot, darn it! I thought I wanted more. I wanted 10 more minutes of this, or if people have stuff, because that whole idea of Marsing and how we do that. And how we replicate, because we're talking about community schools, but we don't know how to do it. I've never done it. And I'd like to know how we do that better. That's one of our visions, is to pilot one school as a community school and try and build that.
Yeah, step 1, resource coordinator, find a really good one. And that's like step 1 is get a resource coordinator. And without that, it's going to fall apart really quickly.
Okay.
Yes, there was a big conference on community schools a couple weeks ago. They're everywhere here in Idaho, the conferences and stuff. Talk to Krista from United Way. She's a big advocate for those. Krista Rowland. She's a huge advocate for community schools. United Way in general.
Okay. Writing that down.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
from the Boise area, and Treasure Valley, and the community schools, program is taking off, and it's really cool to see It also, helps us collaborate better. I'm with the Department of Health and Welfare Navigation, and so we partner and help people, families meet their basic needs for the well-being of children. So we might do rent assistance, mortgage, utilities, car repairs, and really help that foundation so we can come to the schools. It's a little bit less intimidating if we can go to the schools under the community schools concept versus them coming to the Department of Health and Welfare, right? And so it's been really cool to see how it's taken off in our area. So I was curious about that, if you guys are all connected to the community schools concept, because it seems very similar, but I like the trauma stuff that you have in there as well.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, appreciate that. That's a place we'd love to go, but we haven't started yet here. Okay, well, I guess we kind of got to move on. Anybody else got one that they love? What's an idea?
Keith,
Yeah.
real quick, before they do shut us down, I'd just like to thank you for participating today. And I know what you provided us was, as they say, in some cases basic, but very positive, and I think will allow us all to look into the future for more positive action within our communities. And just as a reminder, everybody else, I believe there is a link for evaluation of this session. So as they say, find the link and please provide us some feedback on this particular session.
Right, hit
Again,
thumbs up and
thanks, Keith.
subscribe below if you would. Is that how we're doing this? That doesn't work that way? Okay, sorry. Thought I was on TikTok again. Everybody, thanks for everything you do. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your time today. Hopefully I'll see you around. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, that
Thanks,
was great.
everybody.
And the link, I chatted the link for y'all to go to the final wrap-up session. There's no evaluation for this. Just go click on that next Zoom link, and I guess you'll wrap up there.
We'll wrap it up.